Hello again, I'm Hellcry, and welcome to the 5th video in my series analyzing Y2K, a postmodern RPG. If you haven't seen the previous videos, there's a link to the playlist in the description. I highly recommend it. And once more, I'll explain that I'll be covering 1.0, the original release of the game. There are some changes in later versions, and those will be something I cover separately. Our next step in the story is meeting this nice gentleman, Mark, who tells us a very long story that is interesting, but he informs Alex that he didn't read the record jacket that says it's an album by none other than Vella Wild.
Ah, yes. The Mystical Ultima LP Legend by Vella Wild.
Did you say Vella Wild?
Yeah. But didn't you know this already? It's on the cover. Did you even read it?
Clearly she was the musician, the creator of this record. How stupid I had been. I told her about the record and she must have assumed I read the title closely. Vella Wild. Probably a stage name.
Yeah, the mind is like that. You keep many things hidden away and they come out when they're the most needed.
Now we can finally talk about the record that was introduced 2 videos ago. Alex found this record in the radio tower near his house. However,
Claudio mentioned a post on Onism about it.
Do you come from the internet? Are you from Onism 1999?
What? Yeah, I go on there, but how did you know?
I'm guessing it wasn't you who posted then, was it? Haven't you checked the forums today? Somebody posted a photo of this record jacket, and they've been asking people if they have a copy. They said it had something to do with Semi Park's disappearance.
Guys, desperately trying to track down Mystical Ultima LP Legend by Vella Wild. I can't explain it right now, but I promise it has something to do with the Star Creatures and Elevator Girl. If we find this, we can find EG and finally get to the bottom of this.
and if we look at the record jacket, it shows the main cast for the characters of the game? What's going on here? It's really weird. Hellcry can't possibly explain this. Don't worry, I will. So what we need to do here is remember Vella's reaction to seeing the record.
No! Not that! I don't care about that! This has to be a joke! Are you screwing with me? Where did you get that?
I told you it was in the radio tower!
Look, do us all a favor, and don't try to find that record.
But don't you think that this is all connected? Sammy vanishing, me meeting you, Rory, the entity appearing in my house!
Sometimes a record is just a record and an entity just lives in your house. Don't try and connect everything together like there is some giant cosmic plan. Look, don't look for that record.
Oh, I'm going to. You really can't stop me.
And then what she says after we get the record.
So, I was wondering if you could tell us about the record. The one you made.
What's there to tell? In my previous reality, I made a record. Pretty simple.
Can you tell us why a record jacket from the album you made in another reality that was set to be released next year was found in this reality?
I have no idea. You do realize I left that reality behind intentionally, right? There are reasons I wanted to escape.
Now, let's stop here and take a moment to explore what those reasons are. In a scene after this, Vella tells Alex a story about why she left her reality.
When I entered your reality, I was a much different person than I am now. I was a child prodigy in many ways. I had peaked by my early teens, and I was no longer able to perform or create at a level that could match the adults around me. I was, for all intents and purposes, a disappointment. I considered quitting piano, considered removing myself from art altogether, but something pulled me back. It was May 22nd, 1996, when I met the man who would fix this for me. At 3:02 a.m., I walked into a music club in the city. It was on stage, playing to a small but enthusiastic audience. It wasn't before long that we became both romantically and artistically involved. Our relationship was like a whirlwind of physical and emotional affection. Together, we wrote A Distant Voice, and I knew that I still had the hopes of being not only a good artist, but an interesting human being. Something terrible happened on May 22nd of 1997. At 3:02 p.m., his daughter had come home and found us together. He hadn't yet told his children about me. I was a much younger woman. He followed her out and into a coffee shop. I waited for them to return, hating myself more and more for entering his life and making it difficult. I waited there until 3:02 a.m., completely beside myself. And the strange thing is, he never returned. He never came back into his own apartment. I stayed there for a few days, knowing he'd have to come back eventually, and he simply never did. I had refused to do our music live or release A Distant Voice until I had seen him again. Finally, legal pressure forced me to schedule a release for May 22nd, 1999, with a year-long tour to promote it. I watched in terror from behind my piano as he wrapped his arm around a girl even younger than I. This girl was not his daughter, though she was probably his daughter's age. I left the stage and receded into myself. The man who placed his arms around that young woman was not the same man who placed his arms around me so many times. It couldn't have been. The man I knew would not have put on such a display of affection, knowing it could hurt someone so much. It was in that moment that I longed to leave my reality behind, to sever my ties to my physical form and exist in a different space. For many days, nights, minutes, seconds, I sat in my bed, slowly drifting further into my own depression, slowly pulling my mind from my body. When the separation happened, it was almost immediate. It was so sudden that the painful moments leading up to it felt trivial. I was just my mind, and I had left my physical body behind. I floated until I found a reality that seemed different from mine, hoping to find a reality that contained the him I knew, hoping that he had fallen into this reality, and we could be together again.
In this story, Vella tells of a past lover of hers, how she had come to love him, and how she tragically and somewhat forcibly fell out of love, feeling betrayed by someone she thought she knew. A date and time is repeated throughout this story: May 22nd and 3:02.
This is rather specific and odd for sure.
Well, remembering the details about a traumatic event isn't uncommon, but down to the minute seems almost excessive.
Why would she have these very specific details ready for this sort of trauma dump?
To me, it makes me wonder if these are the actual times of said event, or if it's a thing that Alex uses to give him meeting Vella more of a destined feeling. So, now that him meeting her on the 22nd of May around 3:02 p.m. at the arcade in Frankton could be an important life event.
Yes, and we never dream. I didn't know about dreams when I first came here. I had my first dream the night before I met you.
Must be fate.
We also don't have fate where I come from. I think we never put ourselves in that sort of box. You take away your own freedom by even pretending things like that might exist.
And I want to note here that Vella kind of denies this idea of destiny, despite her repeated use of this specific date and time. Now let's go to Vella's reaction when Alex returns with the party, looking for the record.
Yeah, no, I get it. Just, I wonder if it's somehow linked to everything going on.
I'm telling you, Alex, you're looking for puzzle pieces where there is no puzzle. You're talking like there is some cosmic plan here. What exactly do you think is going on here?
It's all so weird. Sammy disappearing, me meeting you, then Rory, Chandra, and Claudio, we're all linked.
Fine. If it will make you stop sulking, I'll go with you into the mine dungeon. I'd like to know why my record is here myself.
I'm a little confused here, guys. How the hell does Alex know the record is in your mine dungeon?
Because I know she's trying not to think about it, and the things we try not to think about always end up on our minds.
That seems like more of a stretch than the link between Sammy and the record to me, but Sure, I've got nothing else to do. Let's get inside Bella's head.
If Vella was so shocked and offended at the sight of the record to begin with, why is her tone here different? She states a few similar things as Alex does, but now she's okay with reliving and potentially experiencing her trauma again because someone she doesn't like all that much asked twice? Anyways, so Vella allows us to explore her mind dungeon. Well, this would be the point where I say, I will describe what the mind dungeon is in a different video. I feel like I can't possibly explain what's happening in this scene without, well, explaining it. All of the mind dungeon scenes have very specific imagery. Like, the imagery of a stage with these curtains, and these eyes that are on the wall. Sure, that connects these scenes to definitely be within the mind dungeon, but what is a mind dungeon? The mind dungeon is a place within a person's mind. In these areas, the only thing that is present there is that person. Now, that seems obvious, but what that means can be difficult for some people to wrap their heads around. For example, in the next dungeon that we'll be exploring, Essentia's Mind Dungeon is a collection of the different people that make up the Essentia. The people that led to her creation, the people that inspired this idea, and so on. In Alex's Mind Dungeon, the place where you level up, we have the crow named Marlene who talks to us. Marlene speaks in a very particular way. All of his lines sort of frame conversations or interactions Alex has had, but these being honest and self-deprecating interpretations Alex took away from them. Semi, the girl who went missing, becomes Sammy, the librarian, who organizes his thoughts. Michael, his best friend, who he admires and looks up to, becomes a pretentious astronomer. And most telling is his father, becoming a puppet, explaining why he left his mother while Alex was very young. These are also the characters we see in phone calls throughout the game. And if we take a step back to the very first video where I said the factory hotel is Alex's mind dungeon, what did I mean by this? Well, if you look carefully, you can notice that all of the people inside of the factory hotel are just Alex. They actually show up in a scene at the end of Essentia's Mind Dungeon as well to really draw the comparisons. Cool, so that means the Mind Dungeon is a really cool way to show us and tell us a lot more about Vella's character.
While that is a really easy conclusion to make, I think if you look a bit deeper, you can see the reality of the situation.
As we went over earlier, outside of her Mind Dungeon, Vella told her story and what she finds to be the most meaningful and traumatic events of her life. But in her Mind Dungeon, instead of seeing her talk about the man who left her and how it destroyed her, we see her stand in front of a red carpet premiere style area answering questions, almost like an interview out of a magazine. And this room, which is quite literally Alex's living room but shown from a different perspective, leads us to the kitchen where we see Sammy. Well, really two Sammys. One being referred to as her mother as she's cooking soup. If we take a second to look at what her mother is putting into the soup, we can see an untextured cylinder, a sword, panda, a do not enter sign, a telephone, and batteries. Oddly enough, this is actually something that was referenced in an Onizim post by Superb Pudding.
My roommate was angry at me because apparently I had put 9-volt batteries in his soup that morning.
And then we have this transition scene with all these isometric rooms. These, you could call them sections of Vella's mind. And this scene mirrors one in Essentia's Mind Dungeon. The centerpiece here even being Essentia lying in the hospital bed as we've seen in Alex's dreams, with robed Alex's to boot. These are all very odd things to have in a mind dungeon that is supposedly Vella's, as Alex is not a person Vella really cares for.
Before I traveled the soul space, I was a different person. Someone who got hurt by someone who believed they were loved unconditionally. When I was out there, I realized unconditional love exists, but only as something to strive for. It's just a concept. There's no way to actually put it into practice. We can say we love someone unconditionally and we can act like we do, but it's not to judge people for what they did to you or someone else. To accept someone for being human.
Accept someone for being human? I know what you mean, but isn't that funny? Coming from a human, we're all human. We all have flaws, we all hurt each other, but is that the thing to be fixated on? And I do believe unconditional love exists.
Oh? Have you felt it before then?
So what if I have?
From who? What's her name?
I don't know. It's just, I had this dream. And in this dream, I was loved unconditionally. Whoever loved me loved my flaws and loved my mistakes as much as they loved the things worth making me loved. Is that so hard to believe?
Sounds like a dream. So, who was she? Spit it out. Was it Sammy Park?
No, I don't think so. Maybe it was. Maybe it was you. Maybe it was the android in the van. Maybe it was all three of you as one being.
Well, I think you're a lazy ass half the time, so I don't think I'm the one to love you unconditionally. But yes, keep chasing the missing girl who entered the soul space. I'm sure when you finally find her, she'd love you unconditionally.
And that's when we need to take another step back to look at what's being said in her supposed mind dungeon. If you look at the scenes with Vella, it almost reads like a magazine excerpt of an interview with an artist. Actually, this is even visually referenced with one of the hints I mentioned earlier. So basically what I'm asserting here is that Vella's mind dungeon is not Vella's. However, it's Alex's projection of who Vella is, an obsessive fanboy look at this pop star. And one other thing I think makes this entirely clear is the door with the heart on it. Vella, as she describes her situation, doesn't seem too concerned about being with anyone. She was just in a really traumatic relationship. She's been trying to move past it, not think about it, and become a new, different person that doesn't have to worry about her past. However, Alex thinks it's important to illustrate the way that he feels, that Vella is closing the door on their relationship and not opening her heart to him. And when you take this perspective, that this is Alex's projection on who Vella is, it makes some scenes even more interesting within the dungeon. Because it almost seems to illustrate that Alex believes if he gets every answer right on a quiz, Vella would let him kiss her. Almost like a visual novel.
I told her about the record and she must have assumed I read the title closely. Vella Wild. Probably a stage name.
Did I say something wrong? You, kinda stopped talking for a while and looked all deep in thought.
So here you go. We're going deeper. We leave the mind dungeon and listen to a distant voice. So there's a few interesting things that happen. We get a scene where robed Alexes are literally standing behind Velas as the Velas are saying goofy nerd shit. In the background, we also see eyes. Like the mind dungeon.
When I hear this song, I think about distance. The distance between me and the reality I came from.
A lot of this dialogue here fits into a few different categories. A perception of what it's like to be an artist nervously showing your work to an audience.
I don't think I should have played this. Everyone is going to hate my song. The guy who I wrote this for. I wonder what he's up to. I hope this isn't as bad as I think it is. This is what music from my reality sounds like. Pretty different from yours, huh? Do you think I'll ever feel the way I felt when I wrote this song? I hope not. I don't ever want to feel that way. It's so embarrassing hearing myself sing like this. I don't sound so bad, do I? I don't think I ever loved that guy. Do you think this could have ever been a hit? Somewhere, I think it's a hit. Have you spoken to all of us? If you get bored of talking to us, maybe you can just listen to my music. Or plug your ears. It is pretty bad.
Lines directed towards Alex and implying a deeper connection between him and Vella.
Can you hear my heart? It's calling. Which of me is your favorite? I think you're my favorite you. So, when this is over, please tell me that my song is beautiful. Just don't be awkward about it. Don't tell me that it's beautiful like me. Please, just appreciate my art. My appearance doesn't matter. Only what I make, you know? Like, I appreciate you for who you are. Yes, you're kinda a brat. But Alex, you're really not that bad. I bet there is a reason why you are the way you are. Just like there is a reason I am the way I am. We spend so much time of our journey learning about all our friends. Why don't we ever ask about you? Who are you? Where did you come from? How did you get to be the way you are? I think that's what this song is about. Sorry, I lied.
But a few that stand out are the aforementioned nerd shit, referencing Final Fantasy in particular.
There are more Velas here than there are Final Fantasy games. I'm the worst of the Velas. I let everyone down. I'm sorry. Maybe my sequels will be better, but probably not by much.
While this seems like a quirky RPG gag, the sort of context this is set in implies something more. There are robed Alexes laughing behind each Vella. I feel this implies that they're influencing what she says. And given what I've presented about the Mind Dungeons and what she says here, I feel the evidence supports this reading. Have you ever watched Hannah Montana? Please, humor me for a moment. Well, Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus are two different people. Well, not in the literal sense, but obviously to the public they are. Even metatextually outside the show, Miley Cyrus is a different person than the character she portrayed in Hannah Montana, named Miley Cyrus. Now, imagine you were a child and you really like Hannah Montana. And you sort of watch the show and you build up this character in your mind of who Hannah Montana is. Now, instead of Hannah Montana, that's just Vella Wild. Just as Alex role-played as Sammy, constructing a character from these weird onism posts, at certain points he also constructs a character of who Vella is. Both exist to fill the idea of the ideal woman. And now that we have this context, we can talk about the scene after this. After the record plays, the song that is described is not what we hear.
If this is Vella's album, why was a guy singing on it?
Was his voice the one we heard on the record?
No, it wasn't. I don't know whose voice we heard. I was so nervous sharing that music with you guys, I almost didn't realize it wasn't me singing.
I feel this is because this is not Vella's song. It's Alex's song. I think maybe a fun way to interpret this is that it could be a song that Alex wrote for Vella to try to win her affection. Hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Maybe not, but it's a fun idea at least.
And what's odd about this is if you ask anyone, the song, A Distant Voice, is associated with Vella because of its supposedly being the song from the record. However, Vella's theme in the game uses the motif from her performance in the Mind Dungeon. Also, maybe it's a bit odd that it's sung in Japanese for our vaguely ethnic party member.
And one last thought I'd like to point out here is this fun line from the conversation with Vella.
In this reality, death is like giving up or making a mistake. How can you fault someone for dying?
This is quite literally true because the reality Alex presents is that of a video game.
You have died. Do you feel it? Do you feel that tingling sensation? That is how it feels to have your soul separate from your body. Do you wish to return to your physical form and continue?
But for now, I'd like to thank Robin for voice acting Reaction Nod, Cello Stuff for voicing Superb Pudding and Vella, as well as proofreading the script, Big Show Rules for proofreading the script, Linguistic Spaceship, and Ropesnek for making the dialogue portraits used throughout the series. As always, links to their stuff is available in the description below.